We are live with Blue Sky. Let's go. Flare Network, a monster in the making. In today's video, I'd like to show you a full speech of Hugo Philion in Australia talking about XRP and Flare Network. If you want to learn more about, just stay tuned because Hugo is coming next. Stay grateful and stay bluesy. This is Blue Sky bringing you the sauce today. Oh yeah, stay tuned. Hugo's coming next.
All right, so we're kicking off with a keynote from someone who is building some of the most exciting infrastructure in the broader XRP and EMV ecosystem. Flare Network has been quietly and not so quietly becoming one of the most powerful complements to the XRP ledger. Combining smart contract functionality with the speed and connectivity of the XRP ledger philosophy, Flare is unlocking DeFi, real-world assets and yield strategies in a way that is genuinely moving the needle. Delivering today's keynote is the founder of Flare Network, and please welcome onto the stage, Hugo Philion. Woo!
Hiya. So I think a lot of people, when they think about Flare, they think about XRP. And my goal with this presentation is to tell you what we're currently doing with XRP, what we'd like to be doing with XRP in the future, and also how what we're doing expands far beyond XRP, most principally to the real-world assets that can potentially be issued on the XRP ledger. So to try and give you an overview of where we're going with Flare, you can think of Flare as one unified stack of protocols. It starts with data. We are, I think, the only layer one in the space that has integrated data into the core validation system. So we have two data protocols, which I'll come on to on the next slide. We have prices, time series data feeds, Web 2 data, and events from other blockchains, principally at the moment XRP Ledger, but also others. We're building seamless interoperability between any chain that is connected to Flare, and with Flare as a kind of hub in the middle. But I think most importantly for our next phase is where we're going with confidential compute. You only get so much from a blockchain. Confidential compute gives you an additional layer that gives you far more compute capabilities. You can just do more, and you can do it faster, and you can do it more cheaply. But it also gives you privacy. And this is absolutely critical. So Flare is building out three things, and those three things end up in a lot of products. So where we are today, we have two data protocols, the Flare time series Oracle, which delivers pricing and delivers up to 1,000 prices every 1.8 seconds. So that's embedded into the network. Every validator takes part in it. We have the Flare data connector, and this is an Oracle, but for different non-price data. So event data, what has happened on another blockchain, and Web 2 data, which is, if you're looking at a database, has there been a change in that database? Can I prove that to the network in order to do something interesting? So using these two protocols, we have built F-assets, FXRP, which is what we're known for today. So FXRP is your XRP on Flare, and it leverages these two data protocols to build that, which is why we built the data protocols first in order to build FXRP. So what is FXRP? FXRP is your XRP on Flare. It is a one-to-one representation of XRP within our blockchain. We aren't creating spurious units of XRP or, by some kind of magic. For every unit of XRP that is minted onto Flare as FXRP, a unit is deposited on the XRP ledger. So it doesn't increase supply. It's just a mirroring of the asset effectively onto Flare so it can be used within Flare's compute environment. It's non-custodial. We over-collateralize the entrances and exits for safety. And you can look on-chain at any time and see that the amount of FXRP that exists is exactly the same as the amount of XRP that has been deposited, meaning it has total transparent solvency. So this is an overview of the FXRP system. This is an old number of circulating supply. We are now at about 104.5 million units, which is quite nice. So I think, you know, the system we started on the 24th of September, it's grown massively. It continues to grow every single day. We get in about 500,000 to 1 million to 2 million XRP depending on the day. So Flare at the moment is effectively the largest non-XRPL ecosystem. This demonstrates effectively how it's growing. You know, from our perspective as having built this chain, you know, and launched it and come up with what do we want to do with it, this is proof of product market fit. No one has come close as yet to replicating the amount of XRP that is in any other ecosystem other than the XRPL. So total supply is now 104 million, and we have about 80% of it actually utilized on a daily basis in DeFi. Our top 3 markets are actually 2 XRP markets. So FXRP, staked XRP, which I'll come on to in a minute, and USDT, which is our stable, although we are very keen to have RLUSD on Flare. So this describes how the DeFi metrics have moved over time. 214 is a little over estimation right now because the dollar price of assets has fallen, but the number of units of assets that we have on Flare continues to rise, you know, all the time. Our DeFi ecosystem is very wide and very broad. We've had about 2.5 billion of DEX volume in the last year, and as we added FXRP only in September, we think that DEX volume will increase really quite dramatically. And so we've had about a 600% year-on-year growth in the ecosystem. So what can you do with FXRP on Flare? So we try to cut this down into various different categories of things. So your basic things are DEXs, a bit like the XRP DEX, the DEX on the XRPL, but you know, more of them, different types of risk strategies. Perps, you can use XRP to take a derivative position in an asset of your choosing. Money markets, you can lend your XRP or you can borrow dollars against it. Both a fork of Compound called Kinetic and Mystic, which is a more recent protocol but has seen huge institutional traction. You can create a stable coin directly from your XRP. So decentralized stable coin. You can deposit XRP and you get a stable coin out. And when you want to undo that, you just pay back the stable coin that you effectively borrowed against your XRP. We've also extending FXRP onto other ecosystems. So we've launched spot markets for FXRP against USDC and USDH on Hyperliquid. It's getting quite nice volume. Our goal is for FXRP to be effectively the ubiquitous version of XRP on, you know, other smart contract chains, not only Flare. And then we've incubated an application called Firelight. Firelight is a DeFi coverage protocol. It allows you to effectively stake your XRP without having to do anything else. And they provide DeFi coverage for applications across the ecosystem. This is absolutely critical to institutional involvement in DeFi. So it uses XRP to provide coverage across the ecosystem for which you get a yield for the use of your XRP. And then lastly, we've tried to make it much more simple by providing vaults. So all the stuff on the left is things you can do, but it's quite complicated. If you want to be able to enjoy it, but you don't want to have to do all the transactions, make your own strategies, think about monitoring your collateral levels and all that kind of stuff, you can put it in a vault. And the vault goes and effectively does that for you through people that manage that on your behalf. Critically, unlike other vaults, the vaults are only able to do on-chain strategies. So it's all you know, on-chain. It's not taking your XRP. It's not putting it on a centralized exchange, trading it, and all that kind of stuff. It's a vault that is for on-chain strategies only. So one of the things we've worked very hard at is okay, you've got two ecosystems. You've got the XRP ledger and you've got Flare, and they're a bit different. They have different tech. They have different ways of doing signing and all that kind of stuff. So you have to provide bridges between the two. Wallets are those bridges. We started with Bifrost. We've also incubated Luminite. Oxen Flow has been built. We've tried to integrate Ledger and Trezor. But most importantly, today we introduced smart accounts. And I'll come on to that in 1 second. But we've got about 853,000 active addresses, on-ramps and off-ramps in 50 countries. So smart accounts, what is this? Smart accounts are effectively using Flare with your XRP and potentially other assets from the XRP ledger over time without ever having to touch Flare. You use your XRP wallet, the one you want to use, which is, at the moment we're supporting Zaman. And you make a transaction on the XRP ledger. And it acts as a remote control for Flare. So you never have to touch Flare. You don't need to own Flare. You just make transactions on the XRP ledger. It uses Flare's data protocols to pick up those transactions, and it submits it to a controller account on Flare. And so this means effectively the UI for Flare with regards to XRP is pretty much the best UI you will get for any use case of XRP off of the XRP ledger. It's non-custodial, it's secured by our oracles, and we're using it in order to build new products and effectively a yield product. So today we launched this with Zaman, and we've already seen, I think, $2.5 million of additional XRP onto Flare. With one functionality right now, only one, you can deposit to the Upshift Vault, which is a yield product. We will be increasing the capabilities of the accounts over time so that eventually you'll be able to do any transaction that you could do on Flare, you'll be able to do it directly from the XRP ledger. And coming on to Firelight, which is kind of like the big staking protocol that we've been discussing. It launched with a cap. It got 48 million in less than 24 hours. It allows you to effectively take your XRP, stake it to Firelight. They provide cover to blue chip protocols, Aave, Morpho, and those kind of protocols. You get the yield out. For institutions, we've built out a full institutional stack with, Hypernative providing risk monitoring and DeFi coverage, Firelight's sister company Centura providing further risk monitoring. For compliance and analytics, we're embedded with the best people, Chainalysis and Elliptic. We've onboarded pretty much the largest digital asset custodians. So that is essentially a summary of where we are today. What you can do with your XRP on Flare. And now, really, I want to come on to what we're building, which is we term Flare 2.0. And this is an effort from us not only to do more with your XRP, but to expand what can be done, not just with assets from the XRP ledger, but more generally with blockchains. So to give you an understanding of what Flare 2.0 does, is we're building a compute layer on top of Flare. So Flare itself is a blockchain. It runs a compute layer. We're then building an additional private compute layer that sits above Flare. And it essentially extends Flare into a set of hardware called trusted execution environments, which combine privacy with verifiability. The nice thing about trusted execution environments is that you can upload code to them. You can be sure that the code that you want to use has run, and you can verify that it's run properly. And this is effectively a very, very important aspect of what blockchains do today, which is that you know that when you use an app, you are using a particular code base. And that's critical when it comes to things like, to give you a really simple example, let's say you're trying to price a risk in insurance, or you're trying to price something and you need to use a model, a risk model. Now, imagine if you went to a server that had no verifiability. You'd be using a risk model which could have changed since the last time you used it. With trusted execution environments, when you use a piece of code, you know it's the code that you want to use, and you know it's operated correctly. So this then gives us a huge amount of things that we can achieve with trusted execution environments. So the first thing we're building with this is effectively what we call protocol managed wallets. These are wallets on any chain. Most immediately will be XRPL, that can leverage Flare's compute and Flare's compute environment to do whatever you want. But these are effectively an address on a chain that the funds in that are associated with that address, they are managed via a protocol, not via a person. So an application that sits either on Flare or Flare's compute environment where effectively the funds can be administered. So I'll give you some examples of how that can work. So one of the first kind of use cases we think of is regulated real-world asset trading. So imagine you have a real-world asset that is issued on the XRP ledger, and you have 100 counterparties that would like to be able to trade it together. So that asset can sit in a protocol-managed wallet. They can trade it over on Flare, and that protocol-managed wallet can only respond, i.e. send out assets from that wallet, in response to a signed authorization from Flare's compute. So it tracks the state of what has happened on Flare, and it signs an authorization that says this person is allowed to remove, let's say, 100 units of a stock from the protocol managed wallets. And it's authorized by Threshold, which is managed by the Flare network itself. So that gives you private trading and then public settlement, either settlement on Flare or settlement back down to the XRPL. You can use any form of price matching that you want. Trusted execution environments give you the ability to build effectively a very wide spread of different things. And you can embed as much compliance as you like into it. So it's a really great substrate for institutional involvements in Flare, which means that it's a really great substrate for institutional involvement in assets that are issued on the XRP ledger. So money markets, private, compliant, incredibly important. Not something that you can achieve today. There is no, as far as I know, no fully private and compliant money market that exists in the industry. That will be able to be built on Flare, and it'll be able to take in assets from the XRP ledger, XRP, real-world assets, RLUSD, and you can borrow and lend that between each other, and then settle back down to the XRP ledger. This is kind of an example of how it works. It's a little complicated, but effectively it leverages Flare's confidential compute technology to achieve that. So I want to summarize. I'm missing a slide. Flare today is a very strong DeFi ecosystem for XRP. And our goal with what we're building is to make sure that the XRP ledger stays up to date with what real-world assets can be used for. They've just issued MPTs, and they've just created an escrow for MPTs. We want to be able to facilitate at Flare effectively complex transactions for real-world assets that are issued on the XRP ledger.